Hey guys, I'm here to post our chapter 5 for our story Frindle. I think I accidentally said I was going to be posting chapter 4, but we already read chapter 4. So I'm going to read you chapter 5 of Frindle right now. I think we're only going to have time for chapter 5 today because it's a little bit longer. Chapter 5 is called The Report. By lunchtime the next day, Nick had a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach. 7th period was coming. He was going to have to stand up in front of Mrs. Granger's class. The eyes of everyone in his class would be glued to his face, and Mrs. Granger's eyes would be cranked up to the maximum punch power. He looked over his notes again and again. The first English dictionary, the growth of the English language, William Shakespeare, words from the French and German, new words, old words, new inventions, Anglo-Saxon words, Latin and Greek roots, American English, it all became a big jumble in his mind. And his grand plan from the night before, in the harsh fluorescent light of the school day, it seemed impossible. What is it with the clocks in the school? When you're planning to go to the carnival after school, the clocks in every class practically run backwards, and the school day lasts for about 3 weeks. But if you have to go to the barber shop or go shopping for clothes after school, zip, the whole day is over before you can blink. And today, after lunch periods 5 and 6 went by in 2 ticks. As the 7th period bell rang, Mrs. Granger walked into the classroom, took 4 steps to her desk at the side of the room, flipped open her attendance book, glanced out at the class, and made 2 little check marks, then looked up at Nick. She said, "I think we have a little report to begin our class today, Nicholas." 15 seconds into 7th period, and Nick was on stage. This lady plays for keeps, thought Nick. He grabbed his crumpled note cards and his book bag and walked to the front of the room. He stood next to the giant dictionary on its little table, and Mrs. Granger walked to the back of the classroom and sat primly on a tall stool next to the bookcase. She was wearing her blue uniform. Taking a deep breath, Nick began. "Well, the first thing I learned is that the first English dictionary," Mrs. Granger interrupted. "Excuse me, Nicholas, but does your report have a title?" Nick looked blankly at her. A title? No, I didn't make a title." "Class, please remember to include a title whenever you prepare an oral report or written report. Now please go on, Nicholas." And she smiled and nodded at him. Nick began again, looking right at Mrs. Granger. He said, "The dictionary." A couple of kids thought that was funny, but Nick played it straight and kept talking. "A lot of people think that the first English dictionary was put together in the 1700s by a man named Samuel Johnson. He lived in London, England. He was real smart, and he wrote a lot of books, and he wanted all the other smart people to have a good dictionary to use, so he made one. But there were other dictionaries before his. The thing that was different about Johnson's dictionary was its size, first of all. He had over 43,000 words in it. The class made a bunch of noises at this big number. Ooh, and wow, and stuff like that. And Nick lost his concentration. He glanced up at Mrs. Granger, expecting to see those eyes drilling a hole in him. But they weren't. They were almost friendly in a teachery kind of way. She shushed the class and said, "Go on, Nicholas. That's a fine beginning." Nick almost smiled, but he saw the kids staring at him, so he gripped his note cards even tighter and jumped back in. The other thing that Samuel Johnson did was special, was to show the words he thought were important, and then give lots of examples showing how the words got used by people. For example, he showed how the words take could be used in 113 different ways. Nick's report went on smoothly for 12 minutes. Nick was surprised at how easy it was to stand there and talk about this stuff. At the end of the first 5 minutes, Mrs. Granger had to stop Nick again to say, "Class, it is not good manners to yawn out loud or to put your heads down on your desk when someone is giving an oral report." No one in the class cared a little bit about the report, except for Mrs. Granger. Every time Nick glanced up, she was smiling, and her eyes were not the least bit icy or sharp. She was eating the stuff up and listening, nodding, and every once in a while she would say, "Very good point," or "Yes, that's exactly right." But the next time Nick looked up, he saw Mrs. Granger sneaking a look at her watch. 18 minutes gone. Maybe his idea was going to work after all. Time for phase 2. Reaching into his book bag, Nick pulled out the red dictionary he had brought from home. And the one most of the kids had, the one Mrs. Granger said they should. Nick said, "This is the dictionary that I use at home for my vocabulary work. And I opened it up last night to the very front, and right there I found out a lot about how the dictionary was made, right in this book. So I thought some of the ideas would be good as part of my report. It says here, Nicholas." Nick looked up. Mrs. Granger got off her tall stool, and its wooden legs made a screech on the floor. Head snapped to attention, and the class was alert again. Mrs. Granger smiled, raised her eyebrows, and pointed at her watch. "Nicholas, I think the class should read that at home for themselves." Now, John's hand went up in the air. And Mrs. Granger's nod, he said, "But I don't have that dictionary at home, Mrs. Granger. I have the blue one." And several other kids immediately said, "Me too." Mrs. Granger tried not to show that she was annoyed. "Very well, Nick, but it shouldn't take too long. We have other things to do." Nick kept his eyes wide open and nodded. Adjusting his glasses on his nose, he began to read. Without question, this modern American dictionary is one of the most surprising, complex, and profound documents ever to be created, for it embodies unparalleled etymological details reflecting not only superb lexicological scholarship, but also the dreams and speech and imaginative talents of millions of people over thousands of years. It was a long article, and the kids were bored to death, but no one looked bored at all. Every kid in the room knew how the period was more than half over, and Nick's report wasn't just a report. It was one of the greatest time wasters ever invented. Mrs. Granger knew it too. She had edged around from the back of the room to the side near the windows. Nick glanced up at her now, and then he read, and each time Mrs. Granger's eyes clicked up to a new power level. After 8 minutes of Nick's best nonstop reading, her eyes were practically burning holes in the chalkboard behind him. There were only 10 minutes left in 7th period. When he took a breath to start a new paragraph, Mrs. Granger cut him off. "That's a fine place to stop, Nicholas. Class, let's all give him a round of applause for his report." The applause didn't last long. As Nick took his book bag and notes and sat down, Mrs. Granger's eyes went back to almost normal, and she actually smiled at him. "Although your report was a little long," she paused and let that sink in, "it was quite a good one. And isn't it fascinating that English has more different words than any other language used anywhere in the world?" She pointed at her large dictionary. "That one book contains the definitions of more than 450,000 words. Now, wasn't I right, Nicholas? All this will mean so much more since you learned about it on your own." We're going to stop there for right now. We didn't finish chapter 5, but we'll finish it tomorrow and read chapter 6 also. I hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.